This lesson will help students with the concept of rate of change. So we're going to start by looking at a table of values. And when we're looking at rate of change, it's pretty much what it sounds like. How are the values on this table changing as you go down the list? So in order to do that, we have to look at these two columns separately. The change in the x values is also called the run. Change in the y values is called the rise. So if we look at only the values in the column under the x coordinates, we'll notice that the values are going up. They're increasing by 1 each time. So in this case, the run for this table is positive 1. In the y column, however, the values are getting smaller, and they're getting smaller. They're decreasing by 2 each time. So the rise is negative 2. We get to each value by subtracting 2 from the previous number. So rate of change is what we arrive at when we combine these two things together. Rate of change, also called slope, is found by comparing the rise over the run. So we take the two numbers that we found from the table. The rise was negative 2 over the run of positive 1, and you can leave it like a fraction. Negative 2 over 1 is fine, or you can divide, because a fraction really is just division in disguise, and when we divide we get negative 2. So if we take the values from that table and we plot them on a graph, because every point on a graph is made up of an x coordinate and a y coordinate, so we see these points coming up on the graph, we can also find rate of change using these points. And it actually doesn't matter what points you pick from the graph, because you'll notice that all the points line up in a straight line. So rate of change or slope can only be found from a linear function, so they have to be a straight line in order for this to work. So I've used two different parts of this graph to show you that rate of change is the same no matter where you look. So I've compared 2 points in the upper left-hand part of the graph here, and in order to see rate of change on a graph, in order to see rise and run, you have to draw a vertical line and a horizontal line to connect these 2 points together. And then basically what we do is we count. So I have to count down 2 and over to the right 1 in order to get from one point to the next. So that down 2 is my rise of negative 2, and the right 1 movement is my run of positive 1. So looking at the bottom right hand corner of the graph, you'll see that the points that I've chosen here makes a very much bigger shape, but notice what happens. My vertical line down is actually 6 units long, so it's a rise of negative 6 because I'm counting downwards. And then I have to count to the right 3 units, so that's positive 3. But when we put these two numbers into rise over run again, negative 6 divided by positive 3, you'll notice that I get negative 2 again. So it doesn't matter what points you use. Feel free to try it again. Pick 2 other points from this graph and see that you can get a rate of change of negative 2 again. Now this next table I have here is a different table, and there's a lot of values that are missing. So remember on the graph I said you can connect any 2 points together that you want to find rate of change. So from this table I really only know the points from the beginning and the end of this table, the point negative 4, 0, and the point 2, 18. So I'm going to use those 2 points to make my calculation for rate of change. So looking at the x column first, my run is going to be found by taking my 2 x values and finding the difference between them. So I take the 2 from the bottom, call that my x2, and I'm going to subtract the x from the top of the chart, my negative 4. And 2 subtract negative 4 gives me 6. I'm going to do the same thing on the right hand side of the chart and compare the matching y values. So I'm going to start with y value number 2, which is the 18, and I'm going to subtract the first y value, which is 0, and 18 minus 0 is 18. So I take these two numbers, which is still my rise and my run, and I write it in the fraction. Rise over run, 18 over 6, or if I divide that, I get 3. Now, something you want to make sure you note is that any whole number, if I leave my answer as 3, that's fine, but make sure you know that a whole number can be written as a fraction by writing it as 3 over 1. So those are the same, and that is my rate of change for this table. So because my rate of change is 3 over 1, that means that my rise of 3 and my run of 1 can be used to fill in the missing numbers. So because my run is 1, I can add 1 to each of the values that are missing to get to the next number. In the y column, though, I'll have to add 3 to each of the values to get to the next number. And you see that completes the pattern, and it fills everything in even increments.